so I'll introduce our final speaker, Ismail Jeilani. Ismail is an entrepreneur, public speaker, and a freelance writer. He spent 6 years teaching and has helped develop a syllabus that is now used internationally. He has gained business experience through international projects that include the USA, France, Egypt, and India, after completing a leadership program at the University of Oxford, and founded Satifs. Should be sorry if I pronounce it incorrectly. Ismail has recently graduated with a degree in political economy from King's College London, and now is set to join Google as an Associate Account Strategist. Ismail Jeilani.
I'm going to follow the sunnah of Shahroz and stand right here. One thing he didn't mention actually about what that meeting was on in that shoddy cafe in East London was that he's actually helping us produce a film. So I'm actually taking a lot more from you than you took from me. Anywho, around 5 or 6 years ago, I remember I sat down with my sister in the sitting room doing something relatively important like watching Disney. And she asked me, what do I want to do when I grow up? This was before university. And I said, I want to change the world. She was probably 10, maybe 9 at the time. And this was her advice to me. Grow up. Like that's what kids say. And I was just thinking, what happened to your childhood? You know, because when you're young, that's when you think everything is possible. And this links to one other experience that I had in secondary school, in RS, probably in year 9 or year 10. We had a long discussion with our teacher about, can people do whatever they want to do? And she said, no, you have to be realistic. You know, you can't just want something and then get it. And I said, why not? You just can't. Life doesn't work like that. And so putting these two things together, you start to realize that the system is almost there to limit people. But the reality is we should set our own barriers. We know what we're capable of. Last year, I had a really interesting experience in India. A week before I went, a friend messaged me actually and said, hey, are you Pakistani? I said, no. Would you like to go to India? Because apparently there's this thing about Pakistanis going to India and vice versa. I don't know. So okay, that sounds really cool. I'd love to go. It was actually to do some marketing/educational research. And this was the first time in my life that I'd ever gone abroad by myself with something as unstructured as this. So everything else that I'd been on, somebody else did the thinking. You know, they put together a program, and I just kind of followed through and ate the free food, as you do. But for the first time ever, I had to do everything, to the extent where they said, hey, it's India, but where do you want to go to do your research? I was like, yeah, about that. I think there's a city called Mumbai and another one called Delhi. How does that sound? That was literally my reasoning for going to those two cities. And so they said, hey, why not? And they booked the flights for me, and this was great. But I had nothing planned. When we got, I think, to Dubai airport, we landed 15 minutes late, and so we missed the interchange, to get to Delhi. I couldn't really do anything about it. Life hack, by the way. At the airport, you know how the internet works for 30 minutes, and then you're cut off? Go to your mobile settings and clear the cache, and it renews again. Just in case you're stuck at the airport for a couple of hours. Right? Did that. I was there just kind of doing whatever I could to kill time, because I was there for 3-4 hours. Then we landed, I say we, royal we, I landed. I landed in Delhi. The taxi that was meant to pick me up from my hotel wasn't there because they didn't know about the delay. No problem, there are plenty of taxis outside, so I thought I'd just grab one there, grab the SIM card very quickly, and there I was off to my hotel. I began having a conversation with the taxi driver, and as we were speaking, he told me that, you know, the area of your hotel, there's a problem, because there are protests taking place there, and we can't drive there. And this was, I think, at midnight. I should have been asleep by then. And it was just annoying. And so they said, you know, if you'd like, we can take you to a different hotel, or at least try and find something for you. I said, yeah, I appreciate it. Great. Do what you want to do. So they took me to an agency which said something, 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 travel, tourism, something, government, something. It looked legit, you know. And I went inside, and the first person that I met who was sitting down by the desk was a man with an American accent. And of course you trust him because people with American accents never lie to you. And I gave them the contact details of my hotel. And the guy called this number up, and somebody picked up the phone, and I spoke to them, and I said, hey, I booked it through booking.com, here are my details. And over the phone, they told me, we're sorry, but we've cancelled your booking. What do you mean you cancelled my booking? I've got it in front of me, it was there. And they said, sorry, you can't do anything about it, and they hung up. And again, first time in my life being somewhere that I've never been to before. I have no family there, I have nothing there. And I wanted to sleep. And the person there said, did you pay for your hotel in advance? And I said, no, because that's not how booking.com works. You pay when you get there. And they said that's probably why they cancelled the booking. And again, being as courteous as they are, they offered to arrange something for me. I said, okay, do your thing. And the taxi driver then took me aside to a hotel maybe 3 or 4 minutes away from this place. And I walked to the front desk, and I asked them, could I have a booking for one night? And they said, yep, and the price was, I think, 3 or 4 times more than the hotel that I had initially. I didn't have a choice. So I said, okay, do you guys have Wi-Fi? And they said, no. So I said, bye-bye. You know, despite everything, I wasn't actually willing to stay there without the internet because I needed to make sure everything was okay. And then they said, okay, we'll check the boss's Wi-Fi for you. And coincidentally, that was fine. And so they gave me his Wi-Fi password, and I was using that when I went upstairs. And the first thing that I did when I went upstairs was I Googled my story. One of the best things you can learn to do in life is learn how to Google, honestly. Because you can find things out really quickly. Just chuck in a few words. India, protest, hotel scam. Something along those lines. That was literally what I searched for. And lo and behold, my entire story was there in front of me. Like, that's the closest thing to deja vu I'd ever get, right? And this is really strange. My SIM card hadn't activated at the time. I was still waiting for it to work because I wanted to call that hotel number again myself. Instead, I sent them an email hoping that they respond because it was really late. And they responded by saying, we're still waiting for you. Okay, this is strange. I walked outside my hotel room, and there were these 2 European ladies, maybe 40, 50-ish in age. And I thought, okay, by any chance, did something like this happen to you? And I said, my story. And they said, that's exactly what happened to us too. Pause for a moment. Life is kind of like this insofar as, you know how you have plans and you have this direction as to how things should work, but then they don't. And then you're really tested by how do you solve problems. You know, nobody is measured by their ability to do things according to plan. It's more about how do you cope with struggle and how do you cope when things get in your way that you had never hoped for and never planned for. What do you do? And I've noticed one thing amongst quite a few people, and especially I think with BME communities and by extension Muslims too. We're very, very problem focused. You know, we love to discuss problems, issues, complain, and complain. But it doesn't get you anywhere. But then you complain anyway, and you just carry on with that. Start to think of solutions. Start to think of what can you do to make things better. One lesson that I took from economics is this concept of asymmetric information. And to break that down, it's really people don't know the same things about one another, right? Most of you don't actually know me, and I don't know most of you. So I could be whoever the hell I want to be, and you don't have any way of verifying that, by the way. You don't. You know, my entire bio could have been made up. You can't tell. It's true, but you don't know. You don't know, right? New country, they're even less likely to know who I am. And so I thought, let's create a profile that matters. And I went downstairs, and I went back to that front desk, and I said, I want a refund. And they said, what do you mean? And I walked away. Because, persona, right? You want to create the image. By then, my SIM card actually worked. And I managed to get through to my hotel, and they offered to actually come and pick me up from this place. And then I went back to the desk again, and I said, you have 15 minutes, because they're coming to pick me up now. And they said, sorry, it's not according to our policy to give refunds, we can't do that, and so on and so on and so forth. And this is where the whole asymmetric information thing comes in. At the time, I was a student at King's. At this particular encounter, I was a representative of the 27th best uni in the world. And I was like, yeah, I'm the CEO, dude, and I'm really important. Life is not about what you say, it's about how you say it, And so you go all out and you create this super important image. And they were semi-shaky, but they weren't fully budging. And then I said, I have the taxi driver's number too, because I took it down in the car. And they said, oh, let us speak to him. Like, nah. Because the moment you have, splitting two people up, right? The moment the information they give you conflicts one another, problem solved. Shaking even more, but not quite there. So I did what any filmmaker would do, and I'd take the powerful iPhone out, right? So I took it out and I started recording the person. And I said, this is going to reach 50,000 people by tonight. And at that moment, my other taxi driver called me. So I didn't actually have a film. But I carried on pretending like I was recording, just pressing buttons. So really, I had nothing. But it looked like I had something. And by the end of it, they actually agreed to give me my refund, and they carried my bags back to the other taxi. And, I left my passport at the hotel, and I was going to go back and get it myself. And said, no, wait here, we'll get it for you. Right? Go back to the lesson that I wanted to take from this, which is, what do you do when you're faced with problems? Every single individual, every human being has a life full of challenges. And everyone's challenge is different. To go back again to my personal life, there were certain intentions that I had that I thought were really good for me, and I was really upset when they didn't happen. For example, I was meant to pay £3,000 a year for university. I was actually the last year of students to have that chance. That's what was meant to happen. And when I missed the grades for my first choice, and I no longer wanted to go to my insurance for university, I made the very stupid decision to pay 3 times as much for my degree by going the next year. And at the time, you just think, why would this happen to me? Like, I wish it hadn't. But it was that very experience that made everything about where I am now. The organization that I began came because of that problem. The skills that I got from building the organization is what led to the job that I got. Everything that I gained came from a problem that I didn't want to face. I chose to call this talk the greatest story ever told. But I'd be very disappointed in all of you if you're waiting to hear it, because that story should be yours. Thank you.
For that, we'll open up to 3 more questions.
Reprocessing time.
Actually, we can open to as many questions as you want.
You can also watch the short film.
Yes, we can watch that after. Go on, yeah.
So you went, and in university you did something really innovative and something that was really daring. And you went and created your own organization, and you started funding yourself and then other people to get student loans and tuitions and things. There's a lot of people here with really great ideas. How can we be people who take those ideas and literally go out and do something, rather than people who just, sit down and watch Friends? It's a great show.
Ross and Rachel, right? What do you do with an idea? It depends on the kind of idea you have. If it's something that requires some level of technical expertise, for example, I've been teaching for a while as a private tutor, along with kind of a few schools here and there. And one problem that I noticed was teachers can't find students. And it would be great to build an app that did this. I don't code. I can't code. But I still wanted to do it. You mentioned yourself the importance of building networks, because you probably know some computer scientists. Or if you were to do something design related, you probably know someone or someone who knows someone that can design. Use that and just do it. Like, just start. And worst case scenario, if you can't find anybody and what you have in mind requires technical skills, you can actually come up with a concept through prototype. You can just like have an outline of what it looks like. So 2 examples of that. One friend of mine, he had no technical skills, but he designed literally through images of what the app would look like and the kind of function it would have. And just because of him as a person and what he'd done so far, he has interest in potential investors. And that's without building anything. Another person had an idea. It was similar-ish to Uber. And the way he pitched it to investors, I hope I can remember this. He said, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that I'm going to make whoever's involved in this $1 billion. The bad news is that it's going to take Uber out of business. If you want to know any more, ask me after the stage. He walked off. That was it. And the person who's working with him now, I think, was one of the co-founders of Gumtree or eBay. Like a really big, high profile. People invest in people, not ideas. Ideas are cheap. But the people that carry out the ideas are what creates value. So be awesome and do something.
Any more questions?
So you were talking about your story about being abroad and the struggles you faced and everything. Some struggles can be dealt easier because they're circumstantial. What about when you're, like the core foundation you come from, that causes barriers or causes struggles within itself, because that's harder to challenge rather than surroundings?
Yeah.
It's the origin you come from, so how do you want to overcome that? Because it's like you're trying to, it's an internal fight and an external one at the same time. So how does one try and overcome the barriers?
I think one thing I need to be careful of, and people generally when it comes to giving advice, is that we should never compare struggles, because everybody struggles differently. Some have incredibly challenging struggles that others may find easier or more difficult. On this one note, it's always worth going, at least for my own comfort, to remember that لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah doesn't burden a soul more than they can bear. So no matter who you are, and no matter what you're going through, you're there because Allah wants you to be there, and Allah wants you to be there because Allah thinks you can handle it. Right? And Allah thinks you can handle it because He is the one Himself who says, He chose you. So He chose you with your imperfections, and He chose you with your struggle and with your difficulties. Despite all of that, He chose you to be where you are. So our struggles aren't the same, and they probably will never be the same, but it's okay. Because people are different.
Final question? And then we'll move on to watching the film.
Could you explain the work your organisation is involved in, please?
Yes, we want to create the UK's first interest-free student loans company. Everything is centred around that. My story began because of me having to pay $9,000 and not wanting to take a loan. Once I was in a position to cater for my fees, I began creating a kind of a small pot to lend to other students so that they could do the same. And now it's to create something that becomes national and beyond that, international. And everything that we do revolves around that. And it's not just to aid people financially, but aid them in becoming far better than they could be by themselves. So sometimes we struggle with networks. We don't know that filmmaker, we don't know the computer scientist, but we'd love to know them. Or we'd love to work as a consultant, but I don't know anybody that works at Deloitte or McKinsey. Well, let's put them together. So it's centered around building great people, and interest-free loans is just one way for us to make that happen.
And I think we'll end it there. Jazakallah khair for the talk.